see in the chat in a moment. The NASDAQ Center provides programs, resources, and exceptional mentorship to entrepreneurs across all races, industries, and geographies. So definitely make sure to check out those links and resources in the chat. And then just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. First, let us know where you are dialing in from in the chat. And second, we are going to open up for live Q&A at the end of the event. So please submit your questions for us in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen throughout the presentation, and we will try our best to get to all of them. Awesome. Welcome, everyone. And of course, none of what we do could be possible at the center without all of the amazing support from our sponsors, including NASDAQ, Lehigh University, Bank of the West, Airbnb, KPMG, Wilson Sonsini, Woodruff Sawyer, Microsoft Entrepreneurship for Positive Impact, BPM, and HubSpot for Startups. We are humbled by their contributions and hope you are grateful too. And before we get started, we always like to launch a couple polls to see how everyone's doing today. So this first one's going to ask, how are you feeling? Fearful, anxious, surviving, or optimistic? Give it another moment. All right, I'm going to end this poll and share the results. All right, optimism is in the lead, but definitely have some feelings of surviving. So I am hoping our conversation today will address those feelings. I'm confident even. And so I'm going to stop sharing this poll and launch the second poll. What is keeping you up at night? This tells us a little bit about your current entrepreneurial needs. So I will give it a couple moments here for everyone to submit a response. Thank you for participating. All right. We got people all over the country dialing in. Very exciting. Coast to coast. All right. I'm going to end this poll and share these results. All right. Oh, wow. We have a three-way tie between finance, pivot, and team. All right. We will take this into account as we continue to develop programming. So I'm going to stop sharing that poll. And without any further delay, please join me in giving a warm welcome to our moderator, Diondraya Taylor, founder and Chief Innovator of Mindset and Milestones. Diondraya, thank you so much for being here, for bringing this amazing group together. I'm going to hand it over to you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Michelle. And thank you to the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center for helping us to put together this awesome event, and mostly to bring together perspectives from people who are all interested and coming together to find ways to bring entrepreneurship to youth. I am super excited about the folks that we have. This is going to be a really fun conversation. So I will give you a brief introduction to our panelists as they come on screen. We have Dr. Naisha DeWitt. She is CEO and founder of the Oakland Natives Give Back, Inc. And we also have Brian Dozer. He is the superintendent of the Coastline Regional Occupational Program. We have Vian Burflow, Director of Curriculum Assessment and Instruction at Siembra Leadership High School. And we lastly have Jen Finlayson, Director of the Edge in Tech Initiative at UC. I am so excited to have all of you. And so for us to just get started, I want to learn a little bit more about each of you, about what you do, and also about what brought you to this work and how entrepreneurship is relevant to our youth and the future. We'll get started first with Naisha, and then we will go to Brian Dozer, and then Brian Burflow, and then finish with Jill.
Okay. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I am Naisha DeWitt, and I'm the co-founder of Oakland Natives Give Back, and it was founded in 2008. Our mission is to create and scale innovative solutions that empower young people and improve educational outcomes. And our vision is a world where every child receives the quality of education that they deserve and the tools they need to succeed. I found myself in this very unique position of creating a girls program around entrepreneurship when I asked my daughter, who was a junior in high school at the time, what she wanted to be when she grew up. And she told me that she wanted to be her own boss. And I explained to her that it sounds like she wants to be an entrepreneur and asked her to find a summer program that she could participate in over the summer. She couldn't find a program for girls and girls who want to start their own business. So I said, we can create one for her and other girls. And so she became the co-founder of our first social venture. And we called it Girls Equity Movement. It was about 4 years ago. And she's now in her third year as a scholar athlete at Babson College in Massachusetts. It's the #1 school for entrepreneurship in the world, so they say. And she's really enjoying her journey to become that entrepreneur that she dreamed that she could be.
Incredible. Oh, go ahead. Yes, go ahead, Brian.
I was just going to jump right in. So I'm
Perfect.
just raring to go. My name is Brian Dozer. I'm the superintendent of Coastline RLP. For those who aren't familiar with RLPs, we teach career technical education in primarily in high schools. We do a little bit of work with adults, but entrepreneurship and all things business actually fall into this realm. And I found myself here kind of by happenstance. I started in television advertising sales. I spent 25 years doing that. And then I pivoted into higher education where I was got my doctorate in management and ran the campus of a university, which was really focused around MBA programs, management and leadership, that type of stuff. And then from there, I joined a nonprofit that was focused on career technical education. And I went there because I wanted to spend the rest of my career impacting students. And I think career technical education more broadly, but also entrepreneurship, which falls under that, and entrepreneurial mindset, which kind of permeates through all of our courses, is a real game changer for students. And so that's where I wanted to be. And so I made this move, and I've been here about 15 months and absolutely love it.
Berkla, you can take the floor.
Great, thank you. Hi, hello everyone. My name is Brian Berklew. I'm the Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment at Siembra Leadership High School. We are right in the middle of downtown Albuquerque, New Mexico. We are the only public charter school in New Mexico that focuses on entrepreneurship. So when students come to us, they are able to leave with a small business or nonprofit running. So pretty different, unique. All of our classes, we are 100% project-based learning, so it's 100% hands-on. We have a capstone program going from 9 to 12, so they learn about themselves, they learn about other things, all the way up to actually starting their business and product. And let's see how I fell here. I've been in education for about 10 years now. And I always knew when I started, I wanted to help young people. And I also knew that the current system doesn't work, or it doesn't work for most. And I always wanted to find where I could help and change things for jumping into education. And I always loved that side of work. So I was able to kind of combine it. And I've been here at Siembra Leadership High School for a little over a year. So I'm able to do both things I love without having to worry about sales. So that's awesome.
Thank you. And then lastly, Jill.
Thank you, Diondraya, and also NASDAQ, and so thrilled to share the stage with these amazing fellow panelists. As mentioned, I'm the managing director of Citrus, which is the Center for IT in the interest of society, and specifically the Innovation Hub. And I'm focused on, fostering on-ramps into innovation and entrepreneurship, including we do a Designing Startups to Transform Society Challenge Lab here at the University of California at Berkeley. Prior to Citrus, I worked everywhere. I did a little bit of private sector, startups, nonprofits, foundations, consulting. So kind of dappled in a bunch of things. And most recently was running a ventures incubator at Singularity University. But I came back to Berkeley because it was an opportunity to head up Edge in Tech, expanding diversity and gender equity in tech. And through my career in startups and technology, I saw there were a lot of barriers to participation and not a very level playing field. And so this opportunity to kind of look to address systemic barriers to participation, persistence, and advancement, both in STEM and entrepreneurship, was drawing me back to here at UC. And I also joined in with a group looking at inclusive innovation and equitable entrepreneurship initiative here at the University of California, so we could look at the data and understand who is participating and who's not, and how could we address those gaps and increase the outcomes of everybody participating. Thanks.
Well, as you all can see, we have some really diverse perspectives, everything from the K-12 level, regional occupational programs, the nonprofit sector, as well as inside of K-12 classrooms. So I'm looking forward to thinking about how we can find ways to make all of these pieces intersect, and also just thinking about youth entrepreneurship in general, all the different roles that we play. So to pivot into that, we'll start off thinking about some of the broader challenges. So I want to point to Jill and Brian Dozer for this one in terms of, challenges. So what are some of the challenges that you see with preparing youth for the future of work?
Yes, thank you. And I think it's really important to kind of take the big picture view first. And I think there are three things to consider. One is that we have very different new realities. We have new approaches that are needed, and we have new leadership skills that are needed. So when we talk about new realities, we're talking about emerging tech, right? And this opens up the door to a whole bunch of ethical questions, as well as scaling and some concerns for society. We live in a VUCA world, so volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous, which means we both have too much data and not enough data insights. We've got this rapid change, which means how we design and innovate has to change. We've got permeable borders, which means we have distributed teams and global teams. We have the most diverse teams that we've ever had, both from age, ethnicity, across the board, every dimension. We have very diverse teams. So being able to work with people from different backgrounds is really key. And of course, we're a digitized world. So that means new security threats, right? So all of these new realities make it both mandatory that we change, but also more difficult to change. So that brings me to the new approaches. We need to teach differently. This isn't something we can learn in a book, right? This is something that we have to really develop better skills and practices around design thinking, growth mindset, peer-to-peer learning, project and team-based, applied, hands-on, really experiential learning, and making it more learner-centered, right? Like it's around the things that you care about and you're passionate about, and it's interdisciplinary, it's cross-sector. There's nothing that can be done just in one sector anymore. And so that means that we also need these new leadership skills. We talk about 21st century skills, which are critical thinking, creative problem solving, collaboration, communication, global mindset. But that's exactly the skills that employers say that students are graduating college without. They don't have the team building skills. They don't have the communication skills. And so, when we look at universities, it's a real change in how they teach and focusing on teamwork and problem solving, but also empathy, psychological safety and ethics. These are all things that are really key. And it turns out entrepreneurship teaches these skills and really strengthens emotional intelligence, because you have to listen and empathize and learn. And so I think this is why entrepreneurship is so key, whether you go on to become a startup founder or not.
Absolutely. And Brian, this is a perfect handoff to you, especially thinking about hands-on learning and finding interdisciplinary and practical ways to teach and cultivate all these skills.
Yeah, and I think a lot of those, and Jill gave an amazing answer. I would bring it down a little bit earlier in the process, so to speak, because we're focused on K-12, and I think what we're seeing is a lot of, at least here, a lot of our industry is actually starting to consider that their talent pool begins at high school, not necessarily in college. And so it's incumbent upon us in the high school space, and I love what Brian and his folks are doing, but to try and find new ways of teaching. The existing ways that we teach in the existing focus on AP, and all of these, types of approaches, and I would say parents actually are one of the barriers, is something that we have to find a way around. And, it's something that we spend a lot of time working on. And, I know that for my organization and the 5 school districts that we work with, we need to offer more entrepreneurship classes. But at the same time, we also need to be integrating discussions around growth mindset or an entrepreneurial mindset in all of our classes, because we're hearing the same things that Jill just talked about, with businesses saying people are getting, our folks are getting to us and they don't have the basic skills. I can teach them some of the technical skills, but the employability skills, they just are not bringing those. And I think a lot of what we see in the curriculum that we create for entrepreneurship classes or entrepreneurial mindset and the employability skills, they're all tied together. I also would say one of the things that we need to be mindful of, especially for us down at the K-12 level, is that the pace of change in business is far faster than what we can do. And so one of the things that I try and focus on with my organization is to try and match that as much as possible. It's a little more difficult, but I can launch an entrepreneurship class probably by the fall if I started on it right now, which is much different than a traditional high school.
I think speed is such a really key part of thinking about these changes, because we feel like, education in many ways is changing and in many ways it's not. So thinking about how are we adjusting to the way that the world is changing, and also how are we changing our classroom structure and our assignments to reflect the skills that we feel like students are going to need to have in the future. Super, super helpful insight. And sort of thinking about the next steps of that, how do we get the students to come into the classroom? I want to turn to Naisha and Brian Burblow for this question. What is recruitment like for your programs? How are you getting students to come into your spaces and to really give it time and effort in the ways that they do their traditional classes? So we can start with Naisha.
Yeah, excuse me. Recruitment is very labor intensive. It's a very labor intensive process because we're relatively unknown. We don't do a lot of marketing or advertising about our program. So most of those who know about our programs know about it through girls who've previously been a part of gyms or folks that we associate with in the community. We struggle to find the right words to describe the program that appealed to high school girls. It's really tough because so many think that computer science or coding isn't for them. And one of our primary goals is to expose them to careers in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So some of them can identify with wanting to be their own bosses, but beyond that, we just have to help them see that the entrepreneurial mindset is more about developing problem-solving skills than it is about wanting to start their own business. And problem-solving skills are critical, no matter what profession they may ultimately find themselves in. And so I guess what we try to do most oftentimes is really engage schools as much as we possibly can, go to school campuses, pass out flyers, go to our neighborhood cafes, pass out flyers, go to other community centers or enlist the help of our other community-based organizations that may not provide direct services to see if they can, support the recruitment, because we have an amazing programs and our girls are thriving. So yeah, that's it.
Incredible. I love thinking about taking our marketing efforts into the physical capacity, especially with a lot of the students. All they think about for marketing is like social media, but there's lots of ways to reach people. And I think that's really awesome. And we'll pass it over to Brian for your take on the recruitment question.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we are, of course, we're a free public charter school in Albuquerque, so recruitment is always very important. We do a lot of things with marketing, of course, social media is a little bit, but you don't really see the big, a lot of people come from that. We are associated with Albuquerque Public Schools, which is one of the biggest districts in the nation. So luckily, through that, we are able to get addresses and whatnot to students, 8th graders going to 9th grade, and high school students. We're able to send out mailers multiple times a year. Though it's a little costly, that's definitely the most bang for your buck in regards to that. Also, we have a ton of open house throughout the year. And then we also recruit all year. most of our kiddos are like a very high need population, and those are our babies. And so if a kid is coming to us, we had 3 kids start today. And if a student is coming to you in April, there's something going on and they need a place. So we are able to organize it. Well, maybe full schedule, maybe we'll set you up here. So most of our recruitment, though, honestly, is word of mouth. Once we get our kiddos here, the number one thing is we build relationships with them. Like I said, we're completely unique with the project-based learning. We just moved into the new facility, completely open. There are no walls. So it's a little loud at times, but it's just this awesome energy. We also always make sure we're connecting with the community around us. We're downtown for a reason, and we're bringing in partners, or we're taking our kids out. For example, last week we had a forensics class that had 3 different speakers. We went on 2 different field trips for our life skills class just last week. So we're constantly seeing what our students need and asking what they need. One thing is we needed an internship internal in the house that we pay for. So we started that this semester. So it's really just being responsive to the kids' needs, listening to them. And once we get them in the door, then again, the word of mouth, that's how we continue to grow even during the pandemic all the way through.
100%. Hearing them talk to their peers and telling them, I love this program, or I enjoyed this, and I think this is helpful. That word of mouth from the peer level is super, super valuable. And then also, as both of you mentioned, finding ways to connect with the community, engage all of the other people that have vested interest in our students really developing these skills, incredibly valuable. And coming back to the process of what it means to develop entrepreneurial skills, and then how that's supposed to support our students in the future, I'm circling back to Jill and Brian Dozer for this one to think about what role do you feel that entrepreneurial skills play in helping our students to be future-proof and also recession-proof, especially given the sort of looming fear that things are changing, that jobs and opportunities aren't what they used to be? How are entrepreneurial skills supporting that?
Yeah, I think it's really critical to know that people don't stay in the same job for any length of time anymore. People are changing jobs about every 3 years. And when they change jobs, they're changing jobs to align with something they care about more. And they need to have those transferable skills. And entrepreneurship gives them those transferable skills, especially now with AI, Chat GPT. There are all these things going on. And what we actually need, and there's a great article, I'll drop it in the chat, about majoring in being human. There's a lot of things that AI cannot do, and those are the things we need our students to really build their competencies and confidence and agency around. So we need to be able to adopt these essential skills as opposed to technical skills, right? Because technical skills will expire. They'll be, perishable because the technology is changing so quickly. So how do we help students have these problem-solving skills and agency and know their voice matters, that their perspective matters, whether that's in a startup or in a company? We've seen a lot of companies like Airbnb where they're like, hey, our expertise is in, housing. So it turns out during the refugee crisis, they're like, hey, we could start up something good, right? Something impact oriented. So it's not just for startups, right? Every company needs to be innovating as part of their core.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, this is absolutely huge, I think, for students. And again, I'm K-12, so I think a lot of this, we really need to start talking to students early on in their high school careers, because the nature of jobs is changing. It just absolutely is, to Jill's point, about, just the recent explosion of around AI and Chat GPT. But I think a lot of what we're offering to our students, we've made this pivot from really kind of siloed, very vertical type courses, classes, pathways, to more horizontal. And cybersecurity covers a lot of different industries. AI covers a lot of different industries. Drones is in a lot of different industries. And I think entrepreneurial mindset and entrepreneurial skills applies across a lot of different industries. I have absolutely no business. Let's be clear. I have no business being in public education. This is my first job in public education as a superintendent, but I got it because of my entrepreneurial mindset, right? Throughout my career, I have always, exhibited that, and that is what has allowed me to move from, private sector advertising to a university, to a nonprofit, and then into public education. And I think, and I say to students all the time, because I think parents want them to say, all right, I'm going to go be a doctor, I'm going to go be an engineer. And what I say to them all the time, and I'm doing this at one of the school districts tomorrow night, the career that you start out in very well may not be the one you finish in, and you need to be ready for that. And so I think these skills that we're talking about, that we're teaching to students, will actually help them navigate those waters. And also, I think at the same time, they can learn to perhaps take risks, where, I think the natural tendency for a lot of students is to want to be very safe. But I think you're going to be successful, you're going to have to be willing to take risks. And, I've tried to share that with my daughter. And then we talk to students about that all the time as well.
That is huge. I think, both of the points that Jill and Brian, you both made about what does it look like to create opportunities for yourself, and then also to be prepared when your plan A doesn't work out, or when your plan, B, C, D all look different than you thought they would. How do we prepare students to be ready for that, to be adaptable, to pivot, and then also, to your point, to take risks and to be comfortable. I love the thing you just put in the chat, Jill, to be comfortable with failure, with things turning out differently than we thought that they would, and then also understanding what that means for you, having a growth mindset and thinking about where you want your future to go, and also knowing that doesn't mean that what you have right now or the skills you have right now are the only ones you'll ever have. That you can develop new ones, that you can grow and become better, and that's a really important skill that we don't always spend enough time on in the classroom. So I'm excited to talk more about this. And then I think, in addition to that, we talked about, how are students coming into these classrooms, and what are we doing when they get there? I hear from educators all the time with my company that it's really hard to get students to engage, to pay attention, especially with, coming off of the heels of the pandemic, that they are also used to having opportunity to kind of, scroll social media or just do whatever they feel like doing. And so coming back into the regular classroom environment and refocusing and figuring out what it looks like to be a student in the classroom, how are we engaging them? So I want to turn to Naisha and Jill for this one to think about student engagement, and specifically, what kinds of activities are you using to get students to engage in your programs and really produce those strong outcomes? Naisha, I think you're muted.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say I can go first. I think I would say that we keep students engaged by being persistent and going above and beyond what is expected to stay connected. You mentioned the pandemic and how that shifted or changed the way students learn or children learn. Our gyms, we went virtual after the pandemic because our first sessions were in person, and the virtual environment really enabled us to meet the needs of the girls in ways that we never could have imagined, because they were lonely, they felt isolated, they felt disconnected, they did not have friends, they did not have anything that they could call normal going on in their lives when it comes to socialization. And so they bonded and they connected in ways that we could, like I said, we could not have possibly imagined. And so when we say keeping students engaged, since our program is hybrid and all over the United States, and we even have had gyms in London and South Africa, what it means to keep them engaged varies, and it's totally dependent on what the students are going through. Sometimes that means we have to do a home visit. We've had to talk to parents and find out why is your girl not showing up? And we love her, we miss her. And, sometimes they get really guilty when they miss sessions, and we have sessions Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So they can get behind on their Mindset and Milestones curriculum sometimes. So we've had to go out to a cafe and do hubs to bring all the girls together so that they can get caught up on their work. Sometimes it means we have to take them a hotspot or a computer if their computer is down. It means that sometimes we have to go and talk to a school counselor or the principal even, or their teachers, to figure out what's going on. We've even had the girls check on one another and say, you never let your sister fall down or fall behind. That's one of our credos. And so one of the parts of our credo. So no matter what we no matter what, we've learned that being understanding and accepting of where they are makes a world of difference. And once they know that you actually care about them, they can let their guards down and trust you. And, you know, even when they slip slip away from the program a little bit, and we have to go find them and drag them back in and hug on them and love on them and let them know we're still there for them. We always let them know, once a gym, always a gym. And that means that if you were accepted into our program, you're always part of the sisterhood and you're part of the bond. And we're there for you to make sure that you succeed and thrive in your life. And so I think that's really what is most important, is that they feel like they belong and they feel that they have a group of people that they're connected to help them make it through some of the very difficult times that they've been enduring with their mental health. And the challenges around that are so prevalent right now that we find that that's just being there for them and making sure they know that is really one of the most important activities we can do to keep them engaged.
I love what you said there about caring and community. Doing a startup is super stressful. So having people to support you and having collaborators, I think is really essential. I think I would break it down to 3 key things to keep students engaged. One is impact. So is it relevant? Is it important, right, to them? And these are things there you can actually look at, what are the current events? What's happening with climate change? What's happening with the things that the students really care about, and give them an opportunity to have an impact on these issues that really matter to them. The second I would say is applied, and I mentioned this earlier, but this idea of having activities that are off the computer, that are with Post-it notes and paper, like we're going to system map, or we're going to draw a mind map on a whiteboard, or here's, customer discovery. What? You mean I actually have to go out and talk to somebody? The horror, literally they do not like this, but that is a key element to getting to product market fit. And then designing, building something, prototyping, mocking it up, designing it, and then getting it back out in front of people. And you have to do it fast, right? That's the other thing, is it really keeps moving. So really applied and hands-on, I think, is key. And then the third I would say is collaborative. And so when we do a lot of our programs, it's very much reliant on near peers, peer-to-peer coaching and mentoring. They present their problem, and when we have their peers ask clarifying questions, and then we have their peers, give a different point of view that maybe they don't have on their team. And so those 3 things, I think, really make it engaging. And to tie back to something Naisha said as well, it also promotes accountability, right? Because you're not there doing this alone. You're part of a team. There's an obligation, and that kind of checkpoints and milestones really keeps people engaged and moving forward.
100%. There's so much value to take out of those 2 answers, because we're coming from very separate places. I think Naisha, one from just the administrative perspective and the educator perspective, how much can we do? How far are we willing to go to bring our students into the classroom, to bring our students into, virtual or hybrid spaces, and making sure that whatever we're doing is to support their betterment. And then Jill, from your perspective, those ideas about what kinds of things can we be doing? How do we show them what's available, what options there are, and then really bringing those real world examples into the classroom and telling them that those have value here too. I've learned so much from this conversation and gained so much from you, all of you. And I want to kind of finish with a last question before we get to Q&A regarding the big wins for you. Like, as people who are in this space, who are learning from students, who are doing so much to support them, what are some examples that kind of remind you of why you want to do this work? So I think we will start with Brian V, and then we can move to Brian Dozer, and then Jill, and we'll finish with Naisha.
Yeah, thank you. I think every event I mentioned, like we have like open house, and we just had that. We always bring back previous students, and either they're selling their products with us, they're catering it. We've done that all year. So just seeing that, and then our students are able to see those people that, hey, wow, their business is still running, they're still working, they're still profitable. And they really get to like, wow, I can really do this, because they hear us and we're like, you could do it, come on. But when they could actually see previous students and their businesses are thriving and they have that, I think that's a huge win. I just told my team the other day, I mean, the things we're doing at the school is just amazing. And it's the teachers. It has nothing to do with me. They are just amazing. We've done more things with community partners this semester than a traditional school would do in 2 years. So they're constantly bringing in those resources or taking our kids out to those resources, and it's amazing.
So we run a program called, we call it MIRE. It's an acronym for Medical Innovation Research and Entrepreneurship. And it is high school students who come together, and over this course of 9 weeks, they create a product or a solution from soup to nuts based off of a problem that the Children's Hospital of Orange County is facing. So it's in partnership with the hospital. It's also in partnership with the only wet lab in Orange County called University Lab Partners. And then they bring in, patent attorneys, biotech experts, TED Talk folks, and we run the students through this entire process. And at the end of it, they come up with a product that is meant for, the challenge that the hospital is facing in a 3-minute video. And it is breathtaking, the work that, this group of 4 or 5 students, and we'll have like 5 groups, but the 4 or 5 students with the winning project will come up with over just 9 short weeks. It really is quite amazing. And I get a little tired of hearing adults bag on high school students and this next generation and get off my lawn, that type of thing. And because I see this semester after semester, these students come in with unbelievable solutions, and one of them actually kept it going, patented their idea, and they have launched a company out of this. I mean, just absolutely amazing. And so that is one of the things I love to see. We actually are working on different types of programs. I think Brian talked a little bit about, project-based learning, and, and that's what this is. But they also have access to great minds and input from mentors. So it kind of covers a lot of what we've been talking about here today. And I just absolutely love that program.
I think it was over to me next. I want to say, my favorite moment is pivots. And I'll tell you why. It's because pivots is a reflection of all the work that's done. So they've gotten an idea. They've gone out and researched that idea. They've gotten feedback on that idea. They've learned something. They've listened. They've digested and internalized something, so much so that they're changing their business idea. And that moment, that is gold, because it speaks to all of the skills that they've learned. From that point on, they can build whatever they want.
Okay, I guess I'm up next. My favorite moment, hands down, was our trip to London in South Africa in 2019. And what makes it my favorite outcome is the fact that it was the first time that we were able to see our gems shine in their own element. Their first workshop was at International Day of the Girl in London at Chelsea Football Stadium. And over a 2-week span of time, they taught design thinking and prototyping to over 450 students on a global stage. The stakes were so high and they absolutely killed it. I don't think I ever doubted that they were prepared for that. It's just that I was so proud of them. And mostly I was really excited the fact that I got to see the light bulb come on for them. And I think they really learned the true definition of being thought leaders and spreading the notion of solving problems in one's own community. And to watch the girls that they enlightened from all over South Africa, to watch them, admire the girls and want to be entrepreneurs and solve problems in their community. And those young ladies in South Africa had some amazing prototypes. I'll tell you, their prototypes were stunning. But just to have them pour into others was so beautiful. And that was the beginning for us. And just we're finding that the gyms are all thriving. They feel connected. They feel like they belong, and they feel like they're leaders, and they have the power to change the community and the world. And that's what really inspires me and makes me want to fight and, push past the boundaries that we see when funders are not necessarily ready to provide support for this type of program or this enrichment. They don't necessarily associate the funding with the outcomes that the girls might have or that students may have when you're thinking about entrepreneurship. They haven't quite caught up with the case we're making for teaching entrepreneurship, especially to girls. So I'm really inspired, and it helps me fight every day for that reason.
I am inspired by all of you. And to give everyone a little bit more time to get their Q&A questions in before we wrap up, I will also answer this question. So with Mindset and Milestones, all of our curriculum is focused on entrepreneurship and helping students to think about what it looks like to build things to solve problems in the real world. And one of my favorite moments was a student, I was teaching an entrepreneurship class for a school, and a student actually came up to me after class and thanked me for giving them homework. That is quite a time for a teacher, because you find that students always have so much to do and they're so busy. And so this particular student thanks me because I gave them an assignment to do a presentation on an entrepreneur, any entrepreneur of their choosing, and to tell us what problem that entrepreneur solved, how they solved it, and then what challenges they overcame to do so. And this student realized that she could be an entrepreneur even of a tech company without being a tech person, without having a tech background, because she realized that there were so many ways to build a team, and that entrepreneurs aren't just people who build products. Entrepreneurs are problem solvers, but more than anything, they're leaders. They find ways to not only get people on board with their solution, but also get people who want to get involved in building that solution with them. And I find that entrepreneurship as a skill set is so valuable for that reason, that there's so many touch points and so many ways to engage with it, whether that's problem solving or communication or leadership or all of these amazing and necessary 21st century skills that we've talked about over the course of this conversation. There is no way for students to go wrong when they're having opportunities to develop these skills. So I am really excited that we've had a chance to talk about this. And I also, we're at the perfect time, so I want to go back and get to some of the questions that we see in the chat. And while we have any more of those coming in, I want to start with a question that we got, and also co-signed by a couple of people, regarding opportunities for male students regarding entrepreneurship. So I will let the group chime in if there's any thoughts in particular that they have. I can start off with saying that for us at Mindset and Milestones, our curriculum is focused on anybody who's interested, so it is definitely gender inclusive. What we do focus on in terms of girls is mission, so thinking about how can we pull girls into the classroom, but largely because boys are marketed to often more aggressively with some of these subjects, and so already see themselves in this space. And so we've spent time and energy trying to pull girls in, but definitely nothing gender exclusive about the way that we offer our curriculum. And I can also pass along some resources at the end of this program. I'll share those with the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center about some different challenges and competitions as well that are gender inclusive, and that boys are more than welcome and encouraged to apply for, to find opportunities, as well as some free resources that you can take a look at to start playing with ideas with your male youth. Anyone else on the, Jill, go for it, and then we also have Brian unmuting.
Yes, so I would say, one of the challenges is that men have been overrepresented in the space. And so, when we're focusing these programs, we're trying to level the playing field and make sure people feel a sense of belonging. But that said, I do have concerns, and I do want to make sure that men are participating and learning those skills around empathy and ethics and, all of these really critical entrepreneurship skills. And so hopefully they participate in these programs, and the goal of them building diverse teams, they recognize the importance of having different people on their teams, getting different voices represented. So it's really critical. And, I think men oftentimes, don't realize the double-edged sword of gender bias, right? It hurts them as much as it hurts women. And so really building their abilities to build emotional intelligence and psychological safety are going to be key skills, and one of the benefits for them participating in entrepreneurship.
So for us, all of our classes are open to, if you're a student at one of our districts, you're welcome in it. The interesting thing is that it is, at least for my ROP, it is heavily female. It is certainly open to the guys, but it is mostly females that are in it. But I think that presents a unique opportunity for young men to actually work in, very diverse groups. And so we want to make sure that we, try and encourage everyone to participate. One of the things I will say is, because it's great, our programs are grant funded. The state of California actually, through the grant process, actually requires us to reach out to underrepresented populations. And so that's one of the things that we focus on. But I did want to address kind of along these lines, a question that Jessica asked in the chat, which is, are there university programs? And I'm not sure where you are, Jessica, but I can tell you that at least in the state of California, high school students can attend programs or classes for free at community colleges. And all you pay is like the health fee or something. My daughter took multiple classes at community colleges while in high school. It also can count toward credit, depending upon how it's set up. I know here close to us, Irvine Valley College has a spectacular entrepreneurship program that a lot of high school students, both males and females, are participating in. So there are those opportunities out there. I'm not sure about other states and their community colleges, but at least in California it exists.
With all the wonderful people on the panel here today. So if you have other questions, let us know. I know I also saw a question regarding someone who is, I believe, in college right now and trying to start their business. It says, first generation college student looking for what steps or resources could you advise someone in this position to find a strong footing to get started, if any? And also thinking about, because I'm currently working to support my family with a basic 9-to-5 income, but I have been saving up to build my own tech business. So this question really seeming to be, how do you kind of start building, even though you have other obligations financially, 9-to-5, that kind of make sure that you can continue to, support yourself and your family. So anyone on the panel want to start there, either from experience or just any resources you might have for someone who's looking to do that?
I can kind of jump in because a lot of our kiddos here, they are working full-time jobs, doing some college I talked about. They're here, finishing up high school. I think the biggest thing is finding those connections and building those connections, being vulnerable to ask for that help. Wherever you're at, regardless of tech space or whatever industry you're at, I think you have to go out and you have to seek those mentors. And again, just ask those questions and how can I help? And, I'm able to meet 30 minutes here. I'm able to help out your business for a couple hours here for free, just so I can kind of learn about this. And that's the biggest thing that I see here with our high school kids, is the ones that build up those connections and have those when they leave us are usually still pretty successful when we see them years later.
Yeah, let's talk networking. There is a massive networking gap depending on where you're coming from. And, do you know people in Silicon Valley? That's a big gap. And so one of the things that I think entrepreneurship teaches, and, we can really embellish, these type of opportunities in our programs, is networking. How do you connect with people on LinkedIn? How do you build these? And how do you maintain those relationships? Like, what does it look like? How do you talk to somebody? What do you ask them? All of these things are really foreign. And so giving people practice with that and breaking down those barriers will build their network, which will then be there when they need it. But right now, I think that's a big opportunity for us to address.
Yeah, I'm currently having this discussion with my 21-year-old daughter, and just saying to her, look, you have a rare opportunity right now to play the student card, right? Everyone is willing to talk to a student, right? So go on LinkedIn, find, she's interested in space policy research, very, kind of niche, narrow area, but there are a lot of folks out there in it. And I said, connect with them, send them a note, and then tell them that I said, don't use an informational interview. Say you want to have a career conversation with them, right? And I think, I personally speaking, for myself, I will take all comers. I will get, I will have calls with students. And I think a lot of younger folks don't realize that those of us who've been around a while, we consider it our responsibility to help, mentor the next generation. It's in our interest to protect our organizations to help. And then I just wanted to address Alexander's question real quick. Talking about looking at ways to expose her son and understand what the mindset he needs. I would say exploration. Now is the time for exploration. Take a risk, the chances of failure, what failure could lead to, are very minimal. The time for exploration is not when they go off to college and you're spending $30,000 a year for tuition, right? Because that's one of the reasons why so many students don't ever graduate. They don't do the exploration advance. They get to college and they hate what they're studying, and so they just cut and move out. And so I would just say, and we talk about this all the time for our programs, exploration is the time to do it.
Aisha, you had your hand raised. So I don't know if you had another note or if that got answered. Okay, perfect. Yeah, I completely agree, Brian. I think that this concept of like waiting until you get to college to explore, and like that's the time to kind of play around with ideas. It's not too late, but definitely earlier is better, because the more prepared they are with the sense of what they enjoy and what they like, the more effective they'll be in picking classes and tracks of study in college that actually work for them, that excite them, and also eventually career fields that are exciting and fun to them. So yes, for Alexandra, definitely think about, I have some free resources that I posted in the chat on my website that you can take a look at, that are some fun activity books and things like that you could try with your son. 11th grade. So that's a perfect time to sort of start thinking about these things, especially since college might be around the corner, or sort of, wherever the next level of professional progress is. Definitely think about that side of exploring and playing around with ideas. Internships also, or shadowing potential professionals. I think those are great ways to explore, if there's a couple of things that he's really interested in, reaching out to some small business owners in their community, or people that he might admire, and seeing if they would be willing to let him, take a peek at some of the work that they're doing, or to follow them around to some meetings and just get a sense of what that job or that field actually looks like. Very, very valuable.
And I would just say real quick, Diondraya, find out if your local high school has classes that have internships attached. We offer 11 classes, for everything from certified nursing assistant to vet tech to automotive to graphics that have internships as part of the class. And that can be a great way to do it too.
Yes, absolutely. I want to see, did I miss any questions?
So Lakeisha has a question in here about targeting youth through Reardon food deserts, transportation deficient homes, and poverty. This is something, believe it or not, in Orange County that we deal with. Transportation is probably the bigger one because we're so geographically large. We have started actually doing a lot of our classes either virtual or hybrid, and meeting students where they are. And I know that doesn't answer all the questions, because sometimes students don't have the bandwidth or the computers to do that, but it at least is a step. And this came about because of the pandemic. We had to do this. And I think Naisha referred to this a little bit earlier. We had to be able to do this. And so I don't have all the answers, but that's one of the things we've been working on.
If anyone else, especially some of you who are focused either in the social justice space or working with youth from different populations like food deserts, or folks who are dealing with sort of other issues outside of just being able to learn that are important, definitely helpful. And Lakeisha, if your question didn't get answered, I can definitely do some extra digging and then get back to you. Would love to make sure that you kind of get everything that you need. Did we have any other questions? Oh, we have one in the chat.
I think Naisha had a point to include.
I wanted to chime in a little bit, because we also work with
awesome.
we work with students with severe chronic absenteeism, and a lot of times they're facing some of the very conditions that you described. We work with seniors specifically in Oakland Unified School District and one of our other programs. And one of the things that we're teaching students, in addition to the SEL work or SEL skill development, and helping them become more responsible about showing up, because they're seniors, right? And if they don't learn how to show up now, when are they going to learn how to show up for themselves, if for nothing else? But we're also giving them and teaching them entrepreneurship skills. And we find that that's probably, and that work is the most exciting to them. It makes them feel a little bit more hopeful. And sometimes when you think about job readiness or the traditional career pathways, they don't necessarily see themselves working as a barista at Starbucks, but some of them can see themselves starting their own t-shirt company. A lot of them have their own brands or have ideas and desires to build their own products. So I think that those who have or who feel or are most marginalized or are underserved can benefit from having some and get hope because they develop entrepreneurship skills and they know they can hire themselves, employ themselves and their friends and family and others in their community.
That's super helpful, Naisha. One thing I will add is we have, with Mindset Milestones, we have several locations that are sponsored, that are working with students with different populations of that nature. So if you have some extra questions, I'm happy to share more about what we've learned in terms of working with educators, whether that's finding ways to implement a curriculum offline or putting together packets that students can take home to use independently, figuring out how can you sort of adjust your style of your approach to implementation or your approach to getting the content to students based on their situation. Like Naisha talked about, whether that's like hotspots or physical opportunities to learn, digital ones, making sure that we can talk to them. If that's phone calls instead of Zoom calls, there's lots of ways to take really flexible curriculum like ours and others, like free resources that you find online that can be adapted to work with any population of students, so long as we're thinking about what they have access to and kind of applying those needs as we see fit and as they're demonstrating that they need from us. And then one last question, I see we're wrapping up, but I wanted to address this quickly. Anne asked what U.S. or state standards / competencies are you drawing from to develop your programs and classes? I'll definitely speak for Mindset and Milestones. Our curriculum is focused around a lot of these sort of common core standards that are focused on English and language, as well as like reading, and then also the career technical education anchor standards. So thinking about all of those different things like leadership and media literacy, things that are important to preparing students for the future of work, for preparing them for the ways that technology is being implemented in different workforces and giving them chances to play with that and kind of test out how that works for them. Those are some important parts of how we incorporate some state standards in curriculum itself. But if there's additional questions or anyone has any last notes before we finish up, happy to give them the floor. Let's see, we have any questions? I know we're coming up on our time. Is there anyone who could provide free mentoring support to the school / college students for career choices? So that was an anonymous question, but to whoever that is, please feel free to reach out to, I can definitely say for myself, Naisha, and then I think Brian probably also has some resources in this regard. So any of us would be happy to kind of answer some of those questions about mentorship for students and also support in finding mentors, I would say in industry specific ways. So if they have a particular industry that they're interested in, matching them with people who have expertise in those fields, super valuable. Anyone else that I missed? Is that one?
I would say real quick, especially for younger kids,
Sure.
Big Brothers Big Sisters does a lot of mentoring. At least in our area, they are the #1 mentoring organization.
Incredible. So if any questions, I know we have to finish up. So if anyone has any questions that didn't get answered, please feel free to reach out. All of the wonderful people on this panel are very nice and love sharing resources. And also feel free to reach out to me as well. We want to get students and youth involved in entrepreneurship. So any way that we can help you, we absolutely will.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for joining us, giving all of your unique perspectives to such an important topic. On behalf of the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center and everyone in attendance today, we are sincerely grateful for you joining us. All right. And we would love for you in attendance to join us for upcoming webinars. You can view them by using the link that's going to be posted in the chat. Thank you all for joining us once again, and we look forward to welcoming you back online with us soon. Bye, everyone.